Well, it actually says we've been live for a minute, so we had some glitches there, guys. So if you're just tuning in to the CarrGuy SixFan show, thank you so much for joining Grant and I on this episode 16 of season 3. Tonight is a little bit different. We have a challenge with some help from a couple of other YouTubers, and one of them obviously being Grant, but another one that is in the chat tonight. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. But first, we want to welcome everybody to what we classify as the gold standard. I had to write this down. As the gold standard of automotive YouTube talk shows. We are virus-free, we are gluten-free, and absolutely zero Carol Baskins. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for jumping in here. And I'm Jason. I'm old car guy, and my co-host is sitting right beside me. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
So I'm Grant Tommy, and I run a channel called Straight SixFan, helping you build your hot rod and your confidence without a ton of money. And welcome everybody in. Thanks again for being a part of season 3 to, as Jason said, the gold standard of automotive live stream chats. Of course, that's self-anointed, but you didn't have to know that. But we didn't want to say welcome to those who have joined us in the chat. So waiting for us to start was Vincent Bennett. We have GMC Texas, Eford Garage, America Bumper to Bumper, GMC, I already said that, JB Freeman, Trucker Dave, going down the list. We have Speedy Chicks Garage, who I think that's maybe a first time, I may be mistaken, King Eric the Great the First, our favorite, Harrison's Rod and Customs, Will R., Mustang Guy 6501, and David McGraw. So welcome, everybody. We do also typically, before we get too far into it, like to encourage all of you guys, because we want to grow this thing. We want to grow you guys. So if you don't mind taking a second and doing the old right-click option and sharing the link out on any social media, whether that's Twitter or Facebook. I would say Instagram, but they don't like hyperlinks, so that doesn't really help us out. We certainly would appreciate it. Otherwise, give Jason the old thumbs up. And with that, I'll hand it back over to him.
Yeah, so we do have a few what I think are some first timers in the chat. And Christina, who is Speedy Chick, is she was from Pennsylvania. That's kind of where I kind of started following her on Instagram. I believe she's in New York somewhere now. She can probably correct me if I'm wrong. But thanks for joining us. Brian Harrison, also thanks for joining us on the live stream tonight, who is fulfilling his post at the fire hall tonight. Brian, thank you so much for your service. Again, even though I'm not in the States, but I get what all you guys do and what you sacrifice as volunteer firefighters. So thank you. Tonight's show is going to be a little bit different. And the reason why I say that is because a few weeks back, Kip from America Bumper to Bumper, who is in the chat, and I were just chatting back and forth one Sunday evening, and we were just talking about some of the things that would be neat to do for car shows or for videos on YouTube. And we got talking about, well, gee, I wonder how many people would like to do a video of how much or how many cars they've owned over the course of their lifetime. And so that got me thinking. I started making a list, and my list currently is about 36 vehicles long. And I've been driving since 1991. So that's almost 30 years. And I've accumulated almost a car a year. It worked out to probably more like 3 cars a year. And then some years I only have 1. But anyways, so the challenge that we're trying to extend to you guys, who all you car show, car niche type, I don't even know what I'm talking about here, rambling, automotive genre, there we go. All the automotive genre channels is to take on this challenge that we're about to explain to you in hopes that we can direct everybody to Kip from America Bumper to Bumper's channel, help him get to 1,000 subscribers. I think he's at 454. Did we check earlier, Grant? Is that what we came across?
That's what we were seeing.
Yeah, so we want to try and bump him up to 1,000 subscribers, and we're hoping that this challenge will do it. Now, we're not just narrowing it down solely to automotive niche. Anybody can take part in this, but we do have a few rules. So we're going to kind of go over them one by one. And Grant, maybe you can start with the first one, and we'll kind of take it back and forth from there.
Yeah, so we have about 8 guidelines we want you guys to follow. So the first one is at the beginning of the video, kind of out of the gate, is somehow acknowledge Kip or America Bumper to Bumper, his channel. It doesn't really matter. We don't care which one you do. It could be as short and as simple as saying, hey, Kip, here's my list. You know, hey, Kip, this is my bumper to bumper challenge. It doesn't really matter as long as you do one of those 2 things. And then likewise, we ask that you put a link, you know, either in an info card or in the description below. So we'll leave that up to you. You can, you know, just somehow relate those 2 things. And so that's rule number 1.
All right, and we're going to kind of go back and we'll reiterate each kind of rule or guideline, and we will post them in the comment section of this video, so you can kind of go back and reference them after the fact. So the second one, obviously, is the kind of the name of the challenge is name all the vehicles that you've ever owned. It's going to take some time, and we do have a timeline on this, but it's going to take some time to go through in your mind or on paper and list all the vehicles you've had. Doesn't have to be in order, but we just want them to be there. And so that is kind of rule or guideline number 2, is name all the vehicles you have. Grant, what do we got for guideline number 3?
Yes, as Jason mentioned, we are going to cap the time limit on it, but there's something special about why we're saying a time limit. So we're putting a 5-minute time limit on it. But the other part of this challenge is Jason and we acknowledge that you guys come here and you want to grow. You want to grow with us, not just in subscriber count, but you want to get better at your craft as creators. So part of the reason why we're putting a 5-minute cap on it is because sometimes we acknowledge it's really easy to do in our niche is to get into something and you're really trying to explain what you're doing. And so you just sit there in front of the camera and you say, okay, well, and here's what I did and blah, blah, blah. Well, for audience retention reasons, that's a bad habit to get in. I personally struggle with it quite a bit. And I'm constantly trying to look at my analytics and think, okay, well, how long do I have to go before I have to reset the scene? So we're putting a 5-minute limit on the whole video so that, and that kind of bleeds into the next rule with which Jason, what is that?
So along with the list of vehicles you have, now this is certainly going to be a lot easier for some than others. And that is, we would love to see original pictures of each of your vehicles. We understand that, you know, with today's technology, it's so easy because everyone's holding on to one of these. But like for me back in 1991, nobody had cell phones. So we were taking manual Kodak Instapic pictures, and those pictures are where, I don't know. So we'd like to see originals. If you can't find originals, go Google it. Google your car, your truck, your whatever with the same color, and I'm sure you can find something very, very close to what you had. We want to see pictures of some of the cars you've had.
And so that way, as we talked, we're all about changing the scene. That will allow you you can still sit there and talk and keep your story going, but the pictures will assist you in, as we said, resetting the scene. So hopefully, you know, depending on how many cars you have, you're not spending more than like, say, 20 seconds. We looked up before we went live, the average attention span, they say, is somewhere between 8 and 12 seconds. So that's why, like, kind of talking head vlog videos, like, unless you're super entertaining, you know, have a lot of personality, which I know I don't actually fall in that category. Like, I like to think that people just love to listen to just hear me talk, but that's not the case. That's where the see.
Oh, sorry.
Jason,
What'd you say?
exactly is through my point. That's where we're going to use those pictures of your cars to reset the scene. But we do want to give you guys the opportunity to pause on just one car. You know, if it had a special time in your life, you had a special attachment to it, you're allowed one to kind of focus on and tell, you know, a unique story about it. So if you had, like Jason, you have 36 cars, you can't tell 2 stories and show 34. You can only tell 1 story and show the other 35. So please know that is the next rule.
Yeah, and just to highlight on that a little bit too, is what we're trying to talk about is maybe that first vehicle you ever owned was something significant. Maybe it was your dad's, or your mom's, or your grandma's, or your grandpa's vehicle. Maybe there's a specific vehicle that if you're old enough to have kids that drive, that you taught your son or daughter how to drive, something like that. So something that's very significant. a car you took to graduation or college graduation or your wedding or whatever. That's kind of what we're getting with that. The next one is we also want you to mention the longest car, or the car you've owned the longest. Now, obviously, you guys all know that for me, it's likely going to be the Cordova, because I've owned that since 1995. So that's going to be a giveaway on mine. But at the end of the day, we want to know which car you've owned the longest. So we want you to talk a little bit about that. Maybe that might coincide with the previous rule of picking one to tell a significant story about. Either way, we'd like to know which one you've owned the longest.
And then kind of the kind of house cleaning, the final two rules. So second to last rule would be this video has to be scheduled to upload May 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So procrastinate and get it up, an hour before, or shoot it now and schedule that sucker for 5:31 at 8 p.m. Eastern. And lastly, Jason, what are we left with?
Yeah, so the very last thing that we want to do is once your video goes live, we want you to blast your video to every social media you have, every group you belong to. But within that blast, we want you to hashtag bumper to bumper challenge. So along with that is also in the comments, we want you to tag Kip's channel, America Bumper to Bumper. So hopefully people can go over there. And again, tying right into rule number 1 is acknowledging Kip and making sure people know. Please go over and check out his channel and see what he's got to offer. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is we're trying to build this as a growth hack for Kip's channel. And if this pans out and everything works the way we want it to, then maybe it's something that we can help other channels do with other challenges sometime in the future. So we're just testing the waters with this. But like we said, we are going to kind of go back and highlight or elaborate more on the rules, and we'll have them posted down below as well.
I think one other thing I'd say is also I know we maybe tainted the oil a little bit talking about, this is supposed to help us combat the talking head ruts we sometimes get into as automotive creators, but don't let that make you think that's the style you've got to do it. Get creative with it. Maybe it's, maybe you open up a scene with like you saw a car in a parking lot that reminded you of your first car. And so that's like an opening scene or something. Get creative with it and show us what you guys can do. We all have, obviously, there's how many in here, Jason? Like 20, I think. 20 different creators, 20 different, ideas, 20 different creative minds. So make it your own.
Yeah, and again, part of this too is we're trying to reach out to as many different automotive creators as possible. And the reason why we're choosing automotive creators because they're going to know more about their cars likely than the average person. Because they're YouTube creators, they're going to be more comfortable behind the camera. We go back to the whole purpose of this challenge, besides trying to get Kip to 1,000 subscribers. Is going to work in your favor as well, because it's going to help you hone a few skills. And maybe Grant, I'll let you kind of talk about that, because you were bringing that up as well, about what it's going to do for the actual creator in this challenge.
Yeah, like I said, it's a matter of, I've over the course of my channel's life, I've had done like Tuesday shorts, which were I put a limit at 3 minutes on Tuesday upload, and then I had 5-minute Fridays for a while. And so it's just a matter of, again, that just trying to combat, like, it's always easier to go longer than it is shorter, I guess, is ultimately what we're after. So I mean, if you've ever tried to make a channel trailer, which I just redid mine maybe not even a month ago, to do at a minute, that's very tough. And I reset the scene, I think 6 times in the minute, maybe 5. But even at that, so what is that? 60 to 12 seconds, every 12 seconds. So it's just a healthy thing. And I think it's a skill that we all need to acknowledge. I would even challenge you guys, take any car show you like to watch. I always go back to the Spike TV ones, the Power Nation ones, like trucks or whatever. Study those closely and watch how, like, get your stopwatch out and watch, hit start. And when you see the scene change, pause and do it again. And you might notice, they keep talking about the same subject matter, but maybe it's a shock install. And first you see that view up under the car on the lift, and then you see them, they're like, just take any show you like and study that, and you'll be surprised.
Yeah, and that's something I think we talked about that one other time, Grant, about some of these these shows that you take a 30-minute show and take out the intro, take out the commercials, and take out the ad promos within that show, and you're lucky if you get a 15 to 17-minute program out of those 30 minutes, which is why they're so much easier to watch on YouTube than they were live back in the day, because you had to wait a whole another week to catch the next what they were doing to the Chevelle or whatever they were working on. So a lot of this is going to be it's going to be more challenging than I think you guys might think it is, just simply based on the fact that you're on a time constraint, and you've only got so many minutes to do what you need to do with as many vehicles as you have. I mean, mine's 36 vehicles right now, so it's going to be pretty quick, pretty lightning fast. But I do have to, like I said, stop and tell you which one I've owned the longest, as well as a significant vehicle in there somewhere, and still stay within the 5-minute confines. Again, try and be creative. We're not going to beat this whole challenge to death all evening, but we just want to make sure that you guys know about it. We will be sharing some stuff out on it, tagging some big names, like we had Junkyard Digs in here a couple weeks ago. Nick's Garage. I tagged Nick's Garage in the post today, and a bunch of other guys, Mr. Random Reviews, as well as regular car guys. Some of those guys, we're trying to get them in on this. I think I saw Snydertron 3000 in the chat here earlier as well. So, if we can get some of these guys hashtagging this out, and anytime you're talking about it, just make sure that you're letting some other guys know what's going on with the challenge.
And one thing I did want to kind of address, I saw at least 2 comments come up in the chat. One was, I won't necessarily name names. You can find it if you really want, but one was, I have no idea how to do what you are asking. And then the second one was, I might be able to do the list, but the PICS and editing is impossible on this phone. So I guess my advice would be Google, it's called L clipping and J clipping. I would say Google that, and then behind that, input whatever editing software you use. So I know the comment about the phone, you might think you're limited, but the longer time goes on, the more and more robust some of these editors get specific for the mobile devices. So if you don't already have one, I mean, I don't do that. I don't shoot on my phone and use an editor. I mean, sometimes I'll shoot clips, supplementary clips on my phone and import them in my editor. But if you're really limited to specifically your phone, do a little research. There's some great platforms out there for editing straight off of your phone and on your phone. And I think you might be surprised as to what you can do. Maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm not really going to pull off exactly what they're talking about, but you might surprise yourself that you've learned some new skill by challenging yourself to how close can I get to delivering what they were asking for. So don't let it be a discouragement. Look at it as a growth opportunity to just adding at least one trick to your bag. It might not be the full bag of tricks we're asking for, but hey, it's successful on Jason and I's end if we've kind of got you out of your comfort zone to do one thing extra that you're not used to doing.
And you know what, guys? At the end of the day, if it's just Grant and I and maybe and Kip that do this challenge, at least you get to see some interesting content. And
it wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, and we'll be on 2 extremely opposite ends of the spectrum on numbers of cars owned. So let's just let's call it there. We will talk about it more in each show. Granted, I think we're down to what? This is number 3. We got 2 more to do for season 3 after this. So remember, guys, we've only got 2 more episodes left of season 3. coming up next week and the following. They're guest episodes. We do have a couple of good guests lined up, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy those shows. We'll take a little bit of a hiatus before we come back in July and start up again for season 4. I believe it's July. Maybe I'm talking out of turn. I'd have to check my list.
It's the first Thursday after the 4th of July, and I think I looked that up the other day. I think it's July 9th because I think the 4th is on a Saturday this year, I believe. But don't quote me on it because, well, you can fact find yourself. So get better information than listening to me.
So we're going to move on through our regular agenda during these legacy episodes, and we're going to kind of just tie in a little bit to channel struggles and growth hacks. So one of the things that I noticed on a lot of big YouTube channels is that when I go to click on their video from the homepage, from the time that I click on it to the time it loads, which is usually only a couple of seconds, if that, the host of that video is already partway through a sentence, and you've kind of lost a little bit of what they said, because when they hit that record button or when they did their editing, they started right from the time that they speak. And coincidentally, I noticed that when I watched Grant's latest video that came out yesterday, and I kind of went back a couple of times. When I slid the little slider back to the start, it was fine. But when I clicked on his video from the homepage, it started off with him halfway through a sentence. So I've kind of coined the term click delay. And in order to avoid click delay is leave about a second and a half gap between when your video starts to the time your actual video starts. It can be just black space. I started doing that, and I've had a few people mention it in the comments about seeing that little bit of delay. I kind of started off with a little bit of music, but it's going to help with that when someone clicks on your video, that you're not going to get cut off on those first 2 or 3 or 4 words that you're talking about to introduce your video. The introduction of your video is the hook, and you don't want people to miss a word of it. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about for anybody that's in the chat that has a YouTube channel. When you're doing your intro, give it that little 1 or 2 seconds delay before you start talking or before you start editing the video in to get your point across. That way, when people are clicking from the homepage, they're not missing out on what you're saying.
Well, I'm just curious, since we have the chat at our disposal here, just kind of pull the chat real fast. How many people have observed that? Because honestly, when Jason texted me, I had never heard of that, and I don't, thinking about it, I don't know that I've necessarily experienced it ever. I'm not saying that it absolutely never has happened, but I'm just kind of curious from the chat, since we can get a feel for what 20 people notice. Is this something that you guys are noticing? Because I'm just curious. So, and then the other thing to think about, so as Jason says, okay, 1.5 seconds might be a good rule of thumb. Don't think that it necessarily has to be a black space. It could just be as simple as hey, if you're doing the vlog style and you're walking out of a door, maybe that 1.5 seconds is you walking out of the door. Just when you're editing it down, make sure there's 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, and like I said, you guys may have never noticed it, but and maybe it's just me and my internet. Maybe my internet sucks. I don't know.
It's Canada. I'm trying to expose.
Blame Canada. But I have noticed it not just at home, but at work as well, because when I'm on my lunch break, I do like to catch up on a few videos. But I'll guarantee you all right now who are saying you've never noticed it, now that I've mentioned it to you, you're going to notice it. It's like buying the blue car. You've never seen one like yours, blue, before until you buy one. Then you see them going everywhere. Anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there because it is something that I noticed most specifically on Watch JR Go. Every video he starts, it's almost like he's hitting that record button and starts talking at the exact same time, or at least that's kind of the way the edits go. And you've just missed those first couple of words. It's not a big deal. But like I said, your intro is what is going to hook people into your video. Could be just a little bit of a teaser.
And if you want to know probably why it happened to me, is because I probably shoot on average, I probably do at least 3 intros all the time. And so I guess we'll call it a growth hack or whatever, lesson learned. If you force yourself to smile before you talk, you usually sound more energetic. And so the reason why I clip mine probably down so tight or so short is because usually it starts out, if I left it raw, I'd be like, hey, welcome to the, like, because I look goofy because it's like a big inhale and, get the smile going. So I bet you I'm probably guilty of, like, because I want to avoid that, I clip it down too tight. So.
Well, and again, for me, my rule of thumb is because when it comes to editing, I'll click the record button and I'll look at the camera. Sometimes I'll even do like a, clear my throat, a test 1, 2, 3, and then I'll kind of in my head go, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll start talking, because that gives me a delay from the time I get the camera turned around and situated from hitting the record button and doing, whatever. Just pause that 2 or 3 seconds to yourself in front of the camera while it's recording, and it gives you the option during editing to see how far you want to cut that up or not. That's all I'm getting at.
Well, we're getting towards the end of the normal slot. We do try to go to about 35 minutes, and we've got maybe 8 minutes left here in tonight's episode. So we did want to open up that opportunity for questions from the chat. While Jason and I kind of tease maybe channel updates, what's coming down the pike. I do know Eric, the King the Great, he's never short on questions, asked a few of me earlier. One was if my Fairmont had a name, and then the second was if a Mercury Bobcat was my first car, was his guess. No to the Bobcat, although I would build one someday, no doubt. That's basically the rebadged Pinto. As far as the Fairmont having a name, no, other than, hashtag Project Low Fairmont, low fare as in save money. So that's, I guess I'll answer that, but.
Cheap.
Hey, I have no problem. That's what I want the clients to see when they watch one of my videos.
Well, and but that is what it's all about. I mean, there's not too many cars out there that you can buy, whether it be new or old, for $4,000, and to buy it and then spend a few dollars on it to get it to be your own. So that's kind of what's coined the Project Low Fairmont hashtag is, that's what you can do. We can do this on a budget.
So with that, I did want to acknowledge too, RC Nation. I don't know how often he's been in our chat, but I wanted to say welcome to you. He's asked, of course, what were our first cars, Jason? And before we get into that, I'll just kind of mention real quick, as far as a channel update, I do need to get that gas tank back under Project Low Fairmont, but expect the next upload probably to start talking about Go Fast goodies for the car, and that's all I'm going to say.
And speaking of Go Fast goodies, I know wheels do not make a vehicle go fast. They just make it look fast. I hope Brian is still in the chat from Harrison's Rod and Custom. I reached out to him on Instagram a couple nights ago to talk to him about wheels for Project Dale here. And I don't know much about wheels as far as, back spacing and offsets and blah, 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 blah. So I know that he is a huge square body truck guy. He's also big on, he's got several, he's a dealer for several different wheel brands, including American Racing, Detroit Steel Wheel. There's a couple of other ones there as well. He offered me such a sweet deal on a set of wheels that the only thing keeping me from taking him up on that offer was the current situation with the not being able to cross the border to pick up any parts, but also the Canadian exchange rate. When this whole virus thing kind of first started taking place, the Canadian exchange, the Canadian dollar took a dive. And right now, for me to buy one American dollar, it's going to cost me $1.41. So the sweet deal that he gave me was very, very appreciative, but I'm getting screwed on the exchange rate. So as of right now, I have to say, I have to kind of put the wheels. I honestly put the wheels on hold. I did find a supplier in Canada for the same wheels at a very, very close price to what Brian offered me. And I'm happy to say that I did order some wheels for Dale tonight. So that will be in an upcoming episode. So hope you guys stay tuned. And Brian right now is kind of the only one who knows what those wheels are. So hopefully he doesn't let the cat out of the bag.
I will be DMing Brian on Instagram. No.
So before we go too much further with that, guys, if you don't follow Harrison's Rod and Custom on Instagram, please do that. He's a great guy. He's very personable. Rather than chat through text on Instagram, he gave me his phone number, told me to call. So I called. We had a great conversation, and because he is a dealer for those wheels, he's more than happy to help you guys out, and I'm sure that he would work you out a steal of a deal, and he ships anywhere in the country. So don't forget to hit him up on that.
Well, so to close this episode out and address RC Nation's question about what our first cars were, I'm going to cheat a little bit on this one and not answer the question since the bumper to bumper challenge is going on. It'll reveal there. Also, if you really dug far enough on my channel, you could figure that out. That's what my channel's named after, is my first vehicle. So I will tell you the first vehicle I learned to drive in. I believe it's just driving period. It's also drive stick, but I'm 100%, I'm 95% sure it's just drive period. So the first vehicle I learned to drive at like age 14 was a stick shift. And it was my dad's 1984 Ford Ranger 2.2 liter Perkins diesel. So I think it's just such a unique vehicle that I wanted to make mention of that. I can't believe we shouldn't have let it go. If I knew then what I know now, like that truck would still be in the family and they would have some crazy mad scientist things done to that stupid little Perkins diesel, which was like, I think factory rated in 1983, 84 was like, I don't even know if it made 80 horsepower. It may have made 100 foot-pounds of torque, but it was the quarter mile is faster than the 0 to 60. We'll just put it that
way. I am of kind of the same mentality. I don't think I want to release my first vehicle that I have that I ever owned, because I do want to save that for the bumper to bumper challenge. But having said that, if you guys follow my channel at all, you will know that I have mentioned what my what my first vehicle was, and I'm not going to I'm just going to kind of give you guys a little bit of a teaser that this is not my first one, but this is one of my vehicles at one point in time. So we'll just kind of clear that off the screen, stop sharing. But anyways, that is all I wanted to do with that. We are kind of timing out here on our show, and I'm not sure if there is any other questions in there. I see Scott Neighbors has joined in kind of at the last minute. Martin's Garage as well. So I think we can pretty well call this a show. We've talked about what's coming up on the show, as well as what's coming up in the live streams over the next couple of weeks. So guys, I hope you stay tuned. I'm thankful that you guys had an opportunity to tune into the show tonight. And in our upcoming videos, regular videos, maybe Grant, we can kind of throw a little bit of a teaser in there about the bumper to bumper challenge, and kind of do some social media on that. And if you guys see something on our social media, please share it out regarding the hashtag bumper to bumper challenge. So that's going to do it. I'm going to say my goodbyes here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you could make it to the show this evening. I'm going to turn it over to Grant to close us out.
Well, I did want to here right at the end kind of address King Eric the Great. The first question, he was kind of doubling back on me talking about the diesel Ranger. No, it was actually the Ranger. That was 83, 84. I think the first 83, I think, was the first year after the Courier that the Ranger was the Ranger. It did have a 7-foot bed on it, so it was a long bed compact truck. Put the tailgate down, you fit a 4x8. But otherwise, that's going to do it for this week's episode here in season 3 of the CarrGuy SixFan show. Until next time, peace out.